So we're going to get started. So my name is Dr. Natasha Ganem. I'm founder and director of Lion Leadership. Lion Leadership is an agency of coaches and consultants and speakers dedicated to making work awesome for everyone. We have a variety of services, but we have two signature coaching packages that's worthy of sharing. The first coaching package is dedicated to the mid-career professional who just wants to manage better, lead better, and build stronger teams. The second signature coaching package we offer is for founder owners, and that is for founder owners of companies that have grown rapidly and are expecting further rapid scale. We come in and help them get systems and people ready for what's next. Outside of those two signature coaching programs, Lion Leadership offers retreats, so off-site, on-site virtual retreats that help teams build. We boost morale, we train on management and leadership skills, and a variety of other soft skills. So Lion Leadership is a room sponsor, and that was my shameless plug. Again, my name is Natasha Ganem. My cards are up here, but we're most easily reached at www.lionleadership.com. So with that, they have given me some bio material to read for our speakers. And I'm going to read it to do you guys justice before you start speaking. So this is Travis Webb. Travis has worked in the roofing and construction industry for over 20 years. In 2003, he and Chad Collins co-founded Bone Dry Roofing Company after forming a partnership based on similar values and a desire to build an industry-leading professional roofing company. Travis attended the University of Georgia from 1988 to 1992, served as the president of the Roofing and Sheet Metal Contractors Association of Georgia, and is a graduate of the NRCA's Future Executives Institute. Travis splits his time between Bone Dry's three locations in Charleston, St. Simons Island, and Athens. Next to him is Chad Collins, president and co-owner of Bone Dry Roofing Company. Chad has worked in the roofing industry since graduating from the University of Georgia in 1997. After working for a commercial roofing contractor in Savannah for several years, Chad opened Bone Dry Roofing Company in January of 2003. Ooh, you guys are coming up on 20 years.
I don't have the hair to prove it.
Let's talk to Chad, the other Chad, on that. He serves on the board of directors for the National Roofing Contractors Association and chairs the industry's Enterprise Risk Management Task Force. Chad recently served as the chairman of the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. So let's give them a big round. And I need to hit start is my instructions, and you guys are off and running.
All right, thank you. All right, if you heard me before, I got to watch out on the microphone. I don't use a microphone very often because my voice bellows, so I'll try to not throw you out of the room. Good morning. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. I appreciate the opening and as far as presentation of some background on us, but ultimately y'all didn't really come here to hear about Bone Dry or Chad and I and all that, but hopefully to be able to take away something from what we've done that hopefully we can apply to either your business or future business or somebody because we've always said that whole scenario of if it was widgets, if it was whatever, as long as we build a business, it's a business that one day you could sell if you wanted to. One day you could, we didn't have that plan. We didn't have that plan going in, and we didn't come from neither one of us came from money or any kind of background where we had equity or family generational, which was kind of odd for this industry, that most of it is multi-generational. So when we got started, and that's what I'm going to kind of do is the easiest way, since we didn't know there would only be one microphone, we'll just try to wing it I'm going to tell you a little bit about up to a certain point and kind of how we went along, and then let Chad come in at that, and then we talked about at the end maybe a little bit of time if y'all wanted to ask questions that hopefully we could help answer. So as was mentioned, back in 2003, we got started, and it was interesting. It was when you start a business, and it's risky, it's fun, but it was some of the most fun times we had were those early years where there was basically Chad and I and a few guys in the field. I was doing a lot of the in the field work and running the crews, and Chad was estimating, and we were trying everything we could. When we hit our first big numbers that first year, which was not much, that we celebrated that, and then it took till the second year to where we ever finally hit that $1 million plateau, and we were like, okay, we're on our way. And those but those years were really tough. The one thing I think that as I start to think about things to hopefully relay is the one thing that I'm glad that we didn't do just for us was we didn't borrow a lot of money. We didn't even borrow any money really other than just to make truck payments, things like that. And we even had investors that we looked at that point that, do we need to get some money? Or I'm glad we didn't. It's not to say there's not another way to do it. It was just from our standpoint, if we were just didn't overspend and we didn't do that, I had buddies of mine that they'd open a lawn care business and buy a F-350 Lariat, 4 $20,000 mowers, a fancy trailer, and then they'd go find a yard to do. It's like, So we kind of thought through it as in, hey, let's just slow it steady, be patient with this thing and not, overextend ourselves. And the other thing is we didn't take a bunch of money out of the business at that time or anywhere along the way, or we wouldn't have been attractive, for if we ever did want to sell or even just to have a healthy business. So as we talked about that along the way, it was always, if we continue to do this, whether we ever have anybody interested in buying us or if we ever would think about that, which we rarely talked about, we would have a healthy business even if we decided to keep it. So that was kind of the way we progressed that way. Then we hit 08 and we're like, all right, time to buy a building. So about 07, 08, we finally did that and built a building, and then the recession hit, and that was perfect timing. So we were here we are with this building, a little bit of scary times, and we saw a lot of people in our industry fold. And I think we accredited some of our staying power because we have a bunch of different things going on now. Everybody had the nerves of what just went on with COVID. When you never know with the world, there's a lot of different things that now we don't know when it's coming. So you try to kind of prepare yourself, and your employees are worried about that too. Are we going to be okay? Are we going to be okay? And as long as you're not overspending, you're watching your overhead, you're doing things. We felt like, we're gonna make this thing. It's not going to be easy. And we didn't have a bunch of as we heard before, uncles, sisters, everybody on payroll. We didn't have we weren't towing anything. So we just kind of made sure we made payroll, made sure we were paying our bills best we could, and just got through that time. And we didn't have background of any kind of preconceived, this is the way Grandpa did it, or this is the way, we just kind of had to ebb and flow through the business, whether it was roofing or whether it was whatever, of just, you get through those times, and if you never know when they're coming, but just kind of be prepared for them by just continuing to run a business that, somebody would want to look at. You have to grow. Or you don't have to, but I would say you have to, or it's going to be, something's not going to go great. You can if you're going to stay like that, then you better be real thin. As we continued to want to grow, and we both have enough cowboy in us, it's exciting. Growth is exciting. It gives opportunity to all our people, and Chad's going to talk about some of that. We just wanted to be able to have the growth, but you can't forget about the bottom line. And everybody says it's just about the bottom line. We'll talk a little bit about how it's kind of both of those things. But in those years, we had to do that. So once we got to 08 and we got through that, then we started talking about, all right, what's next? Athens we've got Atlanta, and we may do some of that work as well. And we had university work and things like that. But then we were kind of looking at, okay, there's two markets that we always talked about. Not only they're attractive markets to go to, but they're also, we had contacts, they fit some of what we do. And so we ended up opening St. Simon's Island. So as we looked at growth, and again, this isn't about us, but it is about what was attractive about that. Not just that it had a beach, but that you were looking at things where it's a tile market. There's relationships down there, which was a big thing, to where if we can make relationships with a few of those key players, whether it's Sea Island or whether it's people at MUSC in Charleston or wherever it may be, that's really what we're based on, is roofing relationships. And that's the biggest thing we kept saying is, hey, you can bid work. You can always be the lowest bidder. You can do that. And you have to do a little bit of that work if you're going to maintain a size. But if we could have the relationship thing, then you do get through some of those times, and you do have something that is residual, and you do have something that can, that's what people also, if you're selling business, are going to be looking for, those kind of items. Do you have something that's sustainable? Is it going to give that back to you every year? Are there relationships? Is it this kind of thing, rather than just something that, if you're the lowest person, you can always just, somebody else is going to outbid you. But so when we opened St. Simon's, it was immediately get down there and get your roots in there, get involved in the community, get involved in charitable things, get involved in, building relationships. And it's funny because got best friend happens to be a business partner. My closest friends I have outside of that are people that are in the industry, and our customers down there, who I spend a ton of my time with. And when it's real and they believe it and you believe it, then it's something that it keeps. It's hard for somebody to come up to you and be like, we're using somebody else, but I'm enjoying this dinner. It's just a tough thing to do when you travel with them and you befriend these people. So after that, Charleston was always an attractive market. We knew a bunch of people over there. My brother's from it. We had contacts all over the place, and opened Charleston as another. All three markets are a little bit different, but we knew that the size and scale of Charleston and a lot of the industry, and it was booming, was something that we wanted to look at. So as we were eyeballing things with growth, it's like, all right, let's spread our risk a little bit, but none of them were outside the circle. So if rather than build here and then we're going to open here, and it wasn't sporadic, it was planned. And so you go out of Athens, there's a lot of people in that circle that crosses over the circle of St. Simon's that they come and go. They have houses there, they Macon and this and that. Then you come up to Charleston, and kind of those circles interconnect. And we found that we knew a lot of people from the same areas that also had homes down there. So it made sense, and it wasn't just a sporadic decision. I think that when we opened Charleston, we learned a lot, because it is not easy. We're both University of Georgia. We had all our contacts. And everybody was from here, and we had the university. And then all of a sudden, we're in this. I remember walking in that office and I said, uh-oh, it's a big town. We don't know a whole lot of people, and you felt small. We got to go out. We got to make this work. We've got to make this work. So go out, get the contacts, start with the service work, let it build relationships and get to, future roofing opportunities or whatever the opportunity may be. But we never went in but we didn't buy some big office. We didn't, buy 80 trucks and get ready for the business. Once again, started just like we did, where ease into it, so that if you ever got to pull back or whatever. And we just see that sometimes that mistake is made even in our industry, but I got to have all this stuff and get ready for the business, and you go handcuff yourself. And at whatever point you want to be able to sell, you may not be in that good, you may not be in a position where you want to be attractive to them. They want to see growth, but they better see that you're not taking a bunch of money out of the business, and you see that a lot. That's a risk that we would warn, be careful. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about, but a big thing is industry involvement and how much we, got into some of that. I think rather than hearing our story, we'll give you a little background on it, but as far as, I think that giving you guys the opportunity to ask questions, see what, maybe, hopefully we can have some insight on what we did. So just kind of giving you a little bit of overview, kind of like Chad, take it from there, because it's a little bit hard when we're both stepping back and forth. So I think we decided it'd be easier. I'll get you to that point. He's going to talk and then give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. So, Chad.
Thanks, Travis. That was comfortable. Travis nailed it. I'm not going to echo anything. Can y'all hear me? Is that good? Our growth was certainly about diversification. We wanted to be in other markets because we didn't want to have, everything concentrated in one location. Here comes, a downturn in the economy. Here comes, some other uncontrollable. Today what we're dealing with in our industry is material shortages and supply chain issues. And so we believed that the diversification, being in some other markets, gave us some advantages in navigating that, whatever that might be. One of the things that I think we found out along the way as well is we genuinely enjoyed being employers. We started a business because we thought we could do this skill successfully. And somewhere early on, we realized that we really enjoyed creating opportunity for others, and that was synonymous with our growth. the more roofs we did, the more work we did, the more opportunity we had to bring talent alongside us. I mean, maybe that was just a real honest look in the mirror of we didn't have enough talent between the two of us. We just needed a lot more talent. Whatever that reality was, that is, I think, what Travis and I both saw really clearly and really believed in as we grew into other markets, and really saw that, we were able to focus our energy and effort on a business, not necessarily day in and day out in a business. And that allowed us to, create a runway for some opportunity beyond just what are we doing today and how are we dealing with this crisis? Because make no mistake, I mean, we're some version of connected here. I mean, it's a shit show, right? I mean, what we do is chaos. I mean, they were talking about it on somebody's doing a session on it. I mean, you don't grow and get less of that. So, I mean, we can title this and, make this sound all fun and exciting about building something to sell, but it's managing, chaos every day. So, fast forward to, right now, today, Travis mentioned it. I mean, selling was never the end game, okay? And I have found shockingly over the last 2-3 months that nobody really even knows what that means, even though they think they do. Everybody has some version of a story around it, which has shocked me. Somebody, calls, emails, texts, oh my gosh, I heard y'all sold. Uncle Billy used to work for, XYZ Corp 15 years ago. They sold. That manager came in and he lost his job. Selling sucks. Like, I don't even know who Uncle Billy is. Like, what is reality is in a transaction like what we're going to talk a little bit about, and in selling and ramping up for that, literally every scenario is different. Every scenario is pretty custom if you're in the driver's seat selling. I guess that scenario, that story may look a little different if you're having to sell. Those are two very different things. So, I mean, ultimately, we just, this was kind of God's good humor. We had grown to a size where people started sniffing around. I mean, if you own a business, if you are thinking about owning a business, I mean, there are interested parties that are always, nosing around and looking at what you're doing for their own interest. In this case, it was private equity, and we took a phone call one day. Really, I mean, there was no conversation. No contact that somebody knew somebody who, it was really a random phone call that started all this. And I'll elaborate on that, and we'll get to a place where we can talk about some questions and stuff. But one of the things that I think made us attractive as an entity was, as we grew and got to a point several years ago, we realized we needed some processes. We needed some systems in place to hopefully control some of the chaos. There's some people in here in the room who have heard me talk before about a book called Traction, a system known as EOS. A guy named Gino Wickman writes this book. A buddy of mine calls me one day and is like, "Have you read this book, Traction? Do you know anything about it?" I'm like, "No, I'll go get it and read it, and we'll figure this thing out together and talk about it." From there, fast forward 7-8 years now, Traction is an internal operating system that we have been operating off ever since we read that book. It created a lot of initial work in the sense of kind of establishing some core values, defining culture, really formalizing accountability charts, processes, who's responsible for what, and stuff that I really do not care much about, if we're being honest, because that's a lot of detail for somebody who doesn't like a lot of detail. But what someone even like me could buy into were like the instant gratification and the results. You know, we could begin to see issues getting resolved and communication being clearer, and it was all because of our commitment as a team to sort of embrace this new language inside of our organization. Because I mean, it really was like learning a new language, and it is the rhythm and the cadence that we operate off of in 3 markets literally daily now. That had value to someone looking in from the outside, trying to determine if, hey, this is a company with 3 locations. Do they really have 3 individual functioning units, or do they really have maybe a mothership with 2 satellites that if Travis gets hit by a bus and he's not there for a day or 2 in those markets, they really just evaporate pretty quickly. Traction really helped establish value and structure in our other markets. And now, I mean, certainly the markets are different, the scopes of work are different, the talent is different. How we do what we do in those markets is identical. How we communicate in those markets is identical. So that helped, for sure. We found that out as we began conversations with a private equity group that said, hey, would you ever consider selling what you've spent 20 years creating? I don't know that we knew how to answer that. I mean, I think we knew anything's for sale. I mean, we knew that. But we were interested enough to have the conversation. It's funny, I've known people who have gone through this in other industries, who have sold, I've had lots of conversations, and I will tell you this, the answer to the question why you did it is different depending on how old you are, and different depending on what life stage you are at. And it's funny because like I've sort of crossed over to this other side of like being old. And the motivators and the reasons that become attractive for doing something like that are like the exact opposite of what they would have been 15 years earlier. In fact, they would be reasons you would use to not be able to justify doing something like that 15 years earlier. I'm young, and, I've got lots of years left and lots of runway left to, make whatever happen. And the thought of a vehicle plowing into a family of 4 was just not a huge risk that I appreciated very much in my late 20s. At 47, with kids and other obligations and the realization and understanding that it could all be gone like that, it's a different outlook when you start thinking about what do I really have left in terms of if there is a catastrophic loss. We're in a high-risk industry. So that impacted decision-making for sure. But at the end of the day, this was an enormous step out kind of into the unknown. We did not prep for this. We did not hire a consultant and sanitize information for 2 years to make something a lot more attractive, and then let's put that out for proposals and see who can get some people in a bidding war. I mean, we didn't do any of that. And there are really no secrets around our deal as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we'll talk about anything. Because at the end of the day, if there's any part of what we did, if there's any part of this that translates to what you're doing or what you might want to do, we absolutely want to be a resource in that regard. So as we kind of get to some questions, and if anybody wants to ask us anything, I mean, there's really nothing off limits as far as I'm concerned. I mean, just ask if you want to know. But we ultimately went through about a 7-8 month due diligence. Yeah, which was brutal. I mean, the equivalent of, getting a physical every day for, 8 months. But it was legal, it was financial, it was insurance and benefits, it was environmental, it was, somebody's gonna buy 20 years worth of your doings. They're gonna wanna know everything that they can know about it. And that was the takeaway for that. Our deal was, pretty specific. We had no interest in going anywhere. We just don't. We're young enough and enjoy what we do enough that any version of a sale that removed us from the equation was a deal killer. There was no conversation around that, as much for ourselves as for the people that we work with day in and day out, and have grown with for 20 years. So, another big part of our interest in ultimately doing what we did is we didn't want to be perceived any differently in a market. We didn't want a name change. We didn't want a color scheme change. We didn't want a partner of this and, someone maybe coming in and being parked in our office as a CEO from a private equity group that's going to dictate day-to-day activity and reporting. We would not have transacted under any kind of condition like that. So again, as we kind of get into, what did that look like, it was very custom. And this is very fresh. I mean, we're talking about building something others want to buy. We transacted a little over 2 months ago. So this is very new. We're growing and learning, and I'm more than happy to talk about the plan of that for anybody that might care. I mean, it's a very roofing specific focus. It's a silo approach of roofing companies that, more will be more, right? I mean, this thing will have more reach. We will have more presence nationally. We will have economies of scale, and it's very intentional in terms of like what we're trying to create. But that's also very, very roofing specific, and I don't know that anybody cares about that. But I'm glad to answer it if I do. So with that, are there any questions about anything that we've talked about to this point? Yes, ma'am.
Me?
Sure, Natasha.
Well, yes, okay. So you guys, Charleston, probably a lot of people in the room didn't know that because
Sure.
it's been outwardly changed. But there are business brokers out there who represent private equity firms that are constantly looking for good businesses to buy. They look at, of course, your profitability because that's what their investors need to see, and that's going to attract them to you. But what I wanted to ask you, because just a couple of sentences ago you said, we didn't hire consultants to do this and this and this. The private equity person just showed up. You can hire consultants to do that. Client leadership is one of those places you can go for that because we, work on those processes and those systems that you were talking about. If you want to open new locations, it makes it possible. And we work on designing intentional culture, which both of those things actually lead to your profitability. So what I wanted to ask you is how did those processes and the culture that you ended up designing, do you think, how did that actually, the investment and the organizational development part lead to the expansion of profit?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that was not like a direct attack on what you do for a living. So I mean, if we need to go back, stay, yeah.
You're not feeling as lucky.
Yeah, no, and we got a lot of advice to do that. Mentors, people we trust saying, please consider stepping back and just taking a little bit of time and preparing for this. And then we talked to people who obviously did not do that and did not make that decision. But to your question, I'll refer to traction being the vehicle. Traction is, if it is nothing else, it is an effort in forced communication. It is a process and a system that just does not allow communication inside the walls of the office to not occur. Now, it's not perfect. There are so many other systems like it that are out there, some better than other. Traction doesn't pay me to speak on their behalf or sell their products. It worked very well for us. And in doing so, we're labor intensive with what we do. So when we're talking about profitability, we're in man hours and work days and a language that efficiency can really impact. Anybody who's ever talked to me about roofing in general has heard me say, all we do is sell labor. That's all we do. You can go buy what we install for the same thing we buy it for. I mean, it's a commodity. Hell, half of the stuff we install, the instructions are written on the bundle that it's wrapped in. I mean, there is just no value in the material whatsoever. And I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I mean, so it's a labor world for us. And so from a profitability standpoint, getting the structure, getting the processes, being able to gain efficiency with community, all of those things were bottom line impactful, if that answers the question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you guys talk about traction and implementing those systems, which is awesome. I'm wondering, is there anything that the group that you guys sold to wanted to see in your business that wasn't there that you guys could have, say, rewound 10 years ago? Man, I wish we had implemented this to have a higher exit value or whatever.
You want? You want?
Yeah, that's kind of, because we had the perspective now with some of the, because we have joined, there's been 3 people that were acquired, as we've gotten started with this, as far as from the bigger group that we've now joined. So we've always loved best practices. I mean, we used to do non-compete trips all the time when we knew we're not going to open one in Minnesota. We know that for a fact. So we'd go up there and see them, great people on the NRCA with us and everything like that, and we'd learn best practices. Now we've got people that are completely bought in and invested in our business as well as theirs. And we saw some of those when you got to see it and open up the books and open up the doors and look at it. We saw a few things that were like, wow, that I wish we'd been tracking, net profit per employee, just breakdowns of every way that you can analyze it, because it's all in the numbers. So just, oh man, I can get excited about that. If to say rewind and what would we have done different? I think it always goes back to profitability. It's tough because we were financing our own growth for years, and that's a tough thing to do, especially when at new locations and this and that, and you didn't have a whole lot of, you couldn't even borrow people. You basically had to set up new offices, but it would have been, looking at that, because that's what they were looking at when they, came in to make us offers. And what's your profit line? What's your profit line? Would we have used as much if we knew it was coming? Would we have set ourselves up for it more? I don't know that we'd have done a whole lot different, other than now we knew that it was either this kind of just came upon us, weren't really looking for it. But at that point, we also knew, all right, now we got to start getting this thing so healthy, for ourselves, for security, if anything comes up, if we're not going to have backing. And then, because all of our focus has been, I think we have focused on the employees. I think I dive into them. Chad dives into them every day. That's why I travel every single week to 3 different locations, not because I like to have a bag packed, but just investing in our people, letting them know that they're the ones that made this. We had to humble ourselves, and I know it's outside of the question, but it is something. The things that I do think we could have changed would have been kind of at the cost of what we did to build it and for the opportunities. Because you have to humble yourself at some point when it was just Chad and I, and just say, I didn't want to let anything go. I didn't want to let the building maintenance go. I didn't want to let the field go. I didn't want to. And you have to be, okay, there are better people to do this. And now, when you finally surround yourself with, now Eric and them are better estimators. The people in the office are excellent. We knew about accounting and enough to get by in the first years. I couldn't handle that now. Legal, everything. When we would add those team players, our employees are phenomenal. I mean, whether it's sales or it's admin or it's and we have surrounded ourselves with people that are a lot better than we are at all those individual parts. And it takes a while before you can let that go and really be honest with yourself. So that, I'm not as good at that. I'm not as good at that part. And then you step back, like, wow, we've got a successful business. And I would have done that different. So, Lee?
That's a good segue. How have your employees reacted to the sale, and has their perception changed at all?
Yeah, haven't had any problem. No, I'm just kidding. It's of course there were shockwaves, and there were going to be. Change in general would do it, but they'd been, we got a lot, there was a lot of feedback. Some people had just like, we had a few people who were like, kind of hoping this might happen. We've seen that the advantages are real. I mean, the advantages are there, but it was a lot of, hey, we've always worked for you guys. Now, do we have a different boss? And I don't know. And, start looking around for other opportunities. Maybe this isn't what we decided. We always thought we were going to be, because we got to what, we were in the top 100 and one of the only startups in the top 100 in the United States. And, that was a point of pride with it. And it should be with all of our employees, because they all did. It wasn't just Chad and I. And they're like, I thought we were going to go, we'd give them a vision traction organizer. We'd say, hey, which is part of traction, where you say, what's it going to look like in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years. And they got excited about that. And then all of a sudden, well, now wheels fell off. I said, well, I can tell you we can get in that top 10 a lot faster going this way, and it can benefit us all. And so it was a matter of, and it's still, like I say, 2 months, it's still in there where some people were like, I didn't know about it. That was a big thing. I didn't know about it. Well, there was some legal boundaries that we couldn't discuss, that there were some that we didn't know up until the week before after months and months of doing that. Is this even, if we can't get everything on there, if it's not, nobody's coming in and changing. That was a big thing with us. You're not bringing your own people in. I don't care what comes to the table. This is what built us. This is our culture. You can't come in and change our culture, our people, how we want to do it if we, And so getting all that legally down until the last minute, it would have been just chaotic if we would have told everybody about what we're talking about. And it just didn't need to happen. We went through some of that same thing when we opened new offices, which is funny. When we wanted to open St. Simon's and Charleston, some of our most seasoned people were like, it's going to kill the business. It's going to kill you guys are just cowboys. It's going to kill it. I was like, okay, just trust us. Well, in the sale, we kind of had to go back to, that worked. You trusted us, and that worked. And we had to have you guys, we always talk about that I and him need the Kirby Smarts guy on the back, so we're not running on the field, because but you need people that, that follow you around and do that. But you got to trust us in this. There's still some questions. I think they've got to live it. You can tell them as much as you can, but there is no difference. You see, there's no difference. But it's going to take a little while, and selling them on the opportunity. So yeah, there still is a little bit of that out there. So yes, you may want.
The roofing business as well.
I'm sorry.
My second location. So I'm curious, did you guys just make it more to look better for as far as someone else buying your business? With multiple locations, did you run everything like through the main location to make it look more profitable? Or did you actually basically sell 3 separate organizations?
You want to take it? Sure. It's pretty easy.
So the question was, did we represent information separately as part of our deal with the private equity group? And yes and no. We account for those locations separately, but we also account for them as a collective. And so it's pretty easy. We make money in 3 silos. It's commercially, residentially, and odds and ends service and preventative maintenance work. Those are the 3 buckets that we operate, and we operate in those buckets in all 3 locations. So, we basically have 9 areas that we look at pretty regularly, 3 markets. And so the forming and merging and extracting of that information is pretty easy. So, but to the bigger question, that it was presented as the whole. Sure. Yeah. I guess another way of saying that is they would not have been interested in one without the other 2. Yeah, so we rolled 20% of our purchase price into equity in a new parent company that was created as part of this new roofing investment platform that the private equity group formed. So we have a parent company that was created. We rolled equity into that, and underneath that parent company, acquisitions that are being made in the roofing space are coming underneath that parent. So as that grows, the intent at some point, the inevitable at some point is that the company that bought us has an appetite for risk between here and here in dollar value. And whether that's total volume or EBITDA, that their appetite is here. The intent of doing anything like this is for that volume or that EBITDA to grow beyond their appetite. And at whatever point it does, they will sell that to a private equity group that does exactly what they do, just with an appetite for risk, for size in this space. And nobody will know that that has happened. That will be, invisible to the outside world, but that investment will turn and a new effort will be created to do that again. And that is how private equity makes money over and over again with their investments. The larger EBITDA, the larger volume attracts a higher multiple, and that is how they make money buying. I mean, they're not making money spending millions of dollars buying companies. I mean, that costs them money, right? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I've always really appreciated the name, just like who type of branding. Did that come first before the business? How did you come up with the name?
Yeah, so when we started Bone Dry, we started a roofing company. I had a buddy who was an attorney, and we had to file paperwork with the Secretary of State's office to start our roofing company. And on that form is, what is your company's name? And he's filling out some stuff for me and says, hey, what are we gonna call the roofing company? And I was like, I hadn't thought about that yet. Like, do we have to decide that right now? He's like, yeah, we pretty much need to decide this right now. And so we didn't know, and so he said, okay, here's what we're gonna do. This was in the morning, 10 o'clock one morning. He's like, we're gonna do a poll in our office, in our law office, between the attorneys and the paralegals and the admins, and whoever has the best name that we all vote on at the end of the day, that's what you're gonna call your roofing company. And somebody, I think it was a paralegal, although he swears it was him, came up with Bone Dry Roofing, and that is literally how, yeah, which is very synonymous with the next 20 years of everything we have done, oddly enough. Yes, sir.
So, you guys did a great job building your brand around the name, not just you guys yourself. And being from the service industry, I've always been taught that if you're building something to have an exit strategy, you should build it around the name versus yourself. But you guys wound up being a part of your company after selling that. How's that transition been from being an owner to now an employee for it?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. I thought that it would feel different, but I'm thinking maybe it just hasn't been long enough, and that's why it doesn't feel any different. I don't know, because I know that one of the real advantages for Travis and I both was we certainly, we got to take some serious chips off the table around risk and exposure. Right, I mean, personal guarantees, our name on it, just all that went away with the touch of a button. But you do something for so long and it's yours, and the next day nothing is really changing in terms of, yeah, I mean, now I am a W-2 employee of a parent company, but they don't know anything about roofing.
Was it actually, so they had nothing to do with roofing, the people so it's just a consultant firm that came in and bought that?
No, so the private equity group that bought us has a history of investing in service industries. They have a platform in disaster relief companies, They have a platform in street sweepers. They have a platform, an industrial coating contractors. Roofing was new to them. Service industries was not. I say that sort of jokingly, but I mean, they would be the first to tell you one of the attraction, one of the relational parts that we really liked about this group, they had zero interest in being involved in day-to-day running of any of the companies that they're invested in, but certainly not roofing. Yes, ma'am.
So when y'all expanded to St. Simons and Charleston, y'all are from Athens, what's the main thing you did to start networking within those towns? To get your name out there, to get the trust? Because I mean, a lot of what I do in Athens is because I'm from Athens and I'm born and raised, and so people automatically know my family, we know lots of people in common, it's easy. So how do you translate that to a new town where it's
Sure.
don't know anybody?
Yeah, that's a great question. And maybe we double team this. I'll go first and then you, because I think what you'll see is Travis and I do that differently. St. Simons was not foreign for us. I had worked, before opening up our company many years earlier, I had worked in Savannah and actually did a lot of work in St. Simons. My wife's family is all from St. Simons area. There's a lot of natural connection between St. Simons and Athens in particular. I mean, just a lot of relationships that translate over, whether that be residential with, vacation homes, second homes, or even contractors doing work in both markets. So that part of it was not difficult for St. Simons. Again, Travis's approach to that and Chad's approach are different. That story is not the same for Charleston, and I'll let Travis address that. But we feel like we could go into any market anywhere and do what we do. Although it's different people and maybe not a relationship in place, the characters are the same. Who you need to know and who needs to know you for the type of work we do, which is significantly institutional focused. We do a lot of university system work, a lot of healthcare work, churches. I mean, we love multi-building owners, people who are not really in a position to where once a job gets done, they may or may not be keeping that asset very long. And those people in any market are, would be who we went after regardless of if we knew, through relationship who they were or not. But Travis, you want to talk about how we got our ass kicked in Charleston for the first 3 years?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. Excellent segue. Yeah, and I get, because we do kind of rely on each other's strengths and weaknesses different. And I mean, Chad did have background in St. Simons. Basically, Chad, for all intents and purposes, introduced me. I'd been down there a few times in school and all that, but I didn't have any connections down there. And then, as we moved into the market, I always felt like, and we felt like, that if we're gonna do this and we're gonna take on this, then I'm all in. I've got to invest my time down there. I've got to invest in our employees down there and everything, but also in a few of those targeted, who we needed as customers, or I felt like we needed as customers. For instance, in St. Simons, or if you're going to a smaller, you better have some reason for it. It wouldn't have made sense without Sea Island to us. I mean, St. Simon's just not a big enough market for what we were looking for. Jacksonville, sure, Savannah, sure, but that market was a real niche market that you had to have Sea Island. Well, so you just start working in there, but I was just determined we're going to find some relationships in there, and if they're real, and if you invest in them, and I try to do that, and we try to do that with employees as well as, customers. As now, the head of the HOA, I've traveled with him all over the place, hunting trips, this and that, just spending time with some of the builders are really my closest friends, and they're building homes that are commercial projects where you're on them for a year and a half on $25 million homes. I mean, it's a different market altogether, but getting into those relationships we didn't know them before, but I just kind of had to plant myself in that community and plant ourselves in that community with some of the leads going into that. And then there's only a handful of people you got to know down there. Well, the head of development's one of my closest friends, and it's hard for other people to just come in then and break into that market. And they've tried, and they may get some of this out here, but that's where you need to be. When we went to Charleston, huge market, didn't have a lot of background. My brother was from there, a restaurant and things like that, and so it was a lot slower process and but it was still about, all right, we know that these are the top. We'd always do our top 20, and we still are talking about that now. Is always keep farming that top 20. If we work with these people, then we're going to be so. But much easier in Athens, like you say, but not when you go into that. It took a while, but now we've you keep checking them off. Okay, this is who we need to know here. We've got to make sure we get into MUSC. We've got to make sure we get into Citadel. You name your tops, and then go in there and try to find them, and then just invest in time with them to where it's a real relationship, not just you're dropping off a card. It's not easy, but if you can do that, but whatever you're doing, it better be really good, because they can like you like crazy, and they may think you're fun to go have a beer with, but if you can't deliver on and make them look good, and we became a resource for them. I mean, to where we don't have to worry about the roofing part. We're beating our drywall guy up. We're beating our whatever it may be that's your trade. But if you can just, check that one off the list, we've always got that. They come with us, so it didn't just become cheapest. But hopefully that's kind of, and if we went into another market, that's exactly what, try to find those kind of contacts that are really good, and then invest in them for real, not just, so they didn't read through it. Anyone else? Yes.
I owned a couple other bids previously and had business partners. Currently, I don't. And you hear mixed reviews about, should I have a business partner or should I not? So what do you think is actually work?
That's it.
Where maybe it wouldn't work?
Yeah. There's so much material here. It'd be so easy too, but
Does he need to stay in the room, or
yeah,
can he leave?
yeah. Or do you want? Yeah. I don't think I can honestly say never would have wanted to do it at that level on my own, and it wouldn't have been as successful, because the strengths and weaknesses are so different, but yet we didn't know each other. We never knew each other beforehand. I don't know if that was probably a blessing, but it was that we weren't like buddies that then went off to college and I can't live with this idiot. And that's the kind of stories you hear all the time. We were introduced by a mutual friend here in Athens, and he's like, "Hey, you guys seem like you'd want to meet each other." We literally did a project together. I was general contracting, and he had just gotten started. And literally, boom! It seemed like overnight that we were narrowing our focus just into roofing, officing together, and it took off. It's been unbelievable, because you hear all the stories. There've been very few arguments. I mean, the whole way through, and you're sharing money, and you're sharing space, and you're sharing pain, and you're sharing, struggles and employees, which are the number one hardest thing to do by far. The roofing's easy. But one of the most blessed things, and my favorite part of it is also the most challenging, because you got 100 different personalities with 100 different reasons. But it was when to do this and never have had that many arguments, disagreements. We believe in each other enough that if he's real strong on something, or I'm real strong on something, we normally will be, all right, let's give it a whirl. And not that we don't talk it through, but I can say I wouldn't have wanted to do it without a partner at all, not to this scale. So, and he may completely contradict this, Chad. It's like, it's a nightmare.
Boy, am I going to sound like a jerk. No, I totally agree, and there's nothing else to say about it. I mean, I think that Travis and I both, really every step along the way, had so much appreciation and respect for the other one with what we were doing that it just made everything else easy. I mean, if Travis over the years was super bought in or adamant about something that he thought we needed to be doing, I mean, I was not going to be resistant to that out of respect to the relationship. I might not agree, but to Travis's point, I mean, you can count on one hand in almost 20 years, how many of those instances there ever were. The other thing is Travis is really unique. Travis is an investor with others. And I mean, I don't know if any of you guys, I don't know how many investors you know, but like Travis genuinely cares about like other people's experience with everything. Like if he senses that someone is either not bought in, not having a good time, the relationship is not as in a healthy, like Travis, like that, he won't sleep at night. Like he is a genuine investor in relationships, employees, vendors, customers. Chad is not, and I am not celebrating it. But like Chad likes this because there is a level of intimacy that we are never going to get to. And it is comforting for me because you would not like very much about me if we got like much deeper than this. And so like, and so it just works really well. You know, my MO does not set itself up really well for meaningful relationships with customers. I mean, I just, you know, I will just bow out because I just am wired that way. And thank heavens that Travis is not. And it just, so that being one of many examples of where I think, you know, we genuinely have been, it has been such a benefit, not just to each other, but to the business that we were partners. That is kind of comical though, because it is such a, you know, like every, you know, 10 to 1, the stories are, you know, the partnership that just eroded. And so we've been very fortunate. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about how and when in the process you set the sales price? Because obviously when they call you, they have to see your financials.
Yeah.
Multiplier of EBITDA or how
Yeah.
did that look?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they call kind of blind. I think they were less blind than we thought they were because they have an origination team that's doing this crap all the time. And, you know, it's weird. They know stuff. Like, how you know? Like, they know stuff. They, after a couple of phone calls and a face-to-face, we signed a non-disclosure, and we turned over 3 years worth of financials. You know, just in-house. And from that and another conversation, they came back with an approximate offer, an approximate value, kind of to your point, based off of a multiple, based off of the earnings from those three, you know, kind of, hey, if you're willing to let us sniff really deep and, you know, undress for the next 6-8 months, to confirm, but this is the range, you know, this isn't our first rodeo, we do this all the time, this is the range we think that we would be willing to pay to buy you.
So there wasn't a whole lot of negotiation. They had to pique your interest, and then...
Yeah, the number was higher initially than I would have thought that it would have been, and that certainly piqued interest. We were, you know, kind of somewhat, you know, kind of cautiously optimistic because it just was like, okay, well, yeah, maybe, but then they're going to do all this and to say, nah, well, because of this one. But yeah, it was high enough to peak and be interested, and then because it was such a long due diligence, and there were some moving parts. I mean, this means that we're part of an insurance captive. We self-insure for work comp, GL, and auto. For some reasons that are really beneficial to the company and really beneficial to Chad and Travis as owners, and that was not coming off the table in terms of going away if we transacted. So there were some real upfront conversations about stuff like that. You know, Travis mentioned we would have just had no interest in someone sitting in the office as part of a, you know, new management. Yeah, that wasn't going to work. And so there were things, and price was one of them. I mean, there were a couple of times along the way where we were just kind of like, you know, we're not turning that information over. And if the number's not that, then, you know, I guess, you know, there's been a lot of money spent to do nothing because we're not budging off that number. So it was a negotiation, and but at the end, I think it was one of those situations where we were really aligned culturally, and even from a core value standpoint, we really liked the private equity group. We liked the guys we dealt with. We liked the process of how we went through it, and when there were things to push back on and there were negotiations, and they were good to work with. And I had enough people, and Travis, we had enough people in our ear saying, look, at the end of the day, I'm just telling you, that's the biggest piece of the equation. Be sure, don't let it erode over a little bit of money and nobody being willing to give off of a little bit of money if you really believe that this is a great partner and somebody you can see yourself working with moving forward, because that's the part that's going to be most important. And so that was, and we were just fortunate. I think everybody kind of got what they wanted out of the deal. Yes, sir.
With this acquisition that kind of happened, do you think it's going to end up being more about like your personal security and for yourself as individuals, or is it going to be more about growing this even more? Is it going to be more growth into new markets and expansion, or is the equity company going to push up, like expand and grow?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. And again, I think this is what maybe makes everything somewhat unique. In our deal, in our arrangement, it is very much about what happens next in terms of top line and bottom line growth, in terms of acquisition, in terms of, the simple part of that is, our group has committed X amount of dollars to this roofing space, and that will only get us so far with additional acquisitions. And when we get to that point, they are going to really look to be in a position to sell to someone with an appetite that is bigger than what they're willing and able to fund. And so that buyer, whoever that might be, would have the exact same motivators in terms of wanting to see, hey, if y'all were able to get from here to here, we see that there's a lot of opportunity for that to become this with additional funding and so on. So yeah, it's very much a continue to grow strategy. But we love that. That's all we've really ever known and all we've ever really wanted to do. And this just feels like that with a lot more horsepower.